We are back ready to kick off our third match of the day, Sol. But how have you been enjoying the series so far? You know, what have you thought of only the two series we've seen, at least in Europe? And anything really stuck out for you?
I'm going to be honest, I was really hoping to get my teeth stuck more into Ball Control series because he has my two favorite decks in the expansion right now. The Tempo Mage and the Burgle Rogue, Thief Rogue, Passage Rogue, whatever you want to call it. I think both of those decks are super, super interesting and super flexible. So, for Ball to just kind of get blown out 3-0, a little bit of a disappointment for me, but I'm not letting that distract me from the fact that I think both series so far have been awesome. I love Scholomance as an expansion. It is one of my favorite expansions to date, and I'm sure things are only going to get better from here.
Yeah, and we've got Swidz versus Jarla coming right up. It is the winners match, or the upper bracket match. Both players took victory in their first match of the day, and both players are going to be banning Priest. And once again, Sol, we have the Mage, Warrior, Druid, which seems to be the lineup outside of Ball Control, choosing to leave Priest up in his last match. All three players that have played outside of that have been banning that Priest and have had pretty much this lineup. So as an initial, week one lineup, this might just be a cause for the pass so far.
Course for the pass.
Did I say that? I was distracted by my dogs coming in as well. I'm trying to like, Bagel, go out. You can't be in here when I'm working.
Yeah, but obviously I think the big story that we'll have to see develop here is the Bomb Warrior, because, again, small sample size, and we were kind of dunking on it in the first series, but,
right.
We have to hedge that by saying that, we just saw it play a few games, and it seemed very underwhelming. It lost every single game in the first series, if you weren't watching. And apart from the mirror match, where of course it also lost, but it won, and even in the mirror match it still managed to seem unimpressive playing against itself, at least to my eye. So I still think this deck has a long way to go in terms of proving itself. I do think it was struggling at least through day one of the Swiss as well. Looking at the Battle 5 statistics, Warrior did seem to be underperforming. I don't know if that picked up on day two after that, but we'll wait and see whether this is a deck that is going to stand the test of time.
Yeah, and I'm excited to see what happens. Not only, and again, just as a reminder, we are on Conquest this week, but next week we'll be on Last Hero Standing. So again, I'm excited to see how that shifts or alters the meta game combined with the data the players are going to be getting from this week. But we see Swidz his Druid, and again, a little bit of a different list as he isn't running the Mount Sellers, but the Survival of the Fittest with the Sarah Guardian Animal style seems to be doing at least the best so far from what I've seen. We've not seen any Malygos on stream, but I do just think the Malygos Druid variants are a little bit too greedy. But let's get right into it. Swidz on the top on that Druid. Jarla going to be on this Bomb Warrior. Is this the game where Bomb Warrior looks impressive? We're about to find out.
Well, I see an Overgrowth and a Lightning Bloom in Swid's hand.
The answer is no.
I'm going to put my neck on the line and say no, Raven.
Well,
it's just something that I have struggled with a little bit, though, is like with these kind of hands, do you even need the Lightning Bloom? Is it better to just throw away the Lightning Bloom and find a payoff card, since you're going to ramp so consistently with the Overgrowth anyway? Like, does blooming the Overgrowth actually do anything for you in the early game? I'm unsure.
Well, now it gets cards out of his hand for the Overflow, I guess.
Yeah.
Or the Twilight Runner, so it does achieve something. Jarla's opening hand, though, does have that Ankar ready for turn 3 naturally in his hand, not with the help of Corsair Cash. But it does mean Jarla is going to know that Corsair Cash will draw him the Wrench Caliber 100% of the time, so it doesn't have to worry about that, because, again, I'm not sure for Jarla if he's even bothered about the Ankar in this matchup, or whether he wants to get the Wrench Calibers cooking as quickly as possible.
So I think this Ysera draw changed the curve significantly for Swidz. I think potentially with the hand he already had, Vate Overgrowth was justifiable in terms of what turn did what and when you got to do powerful things. But with the Ysera now available, I think you just want to Overgrowth naturally on 4, and then Vate your Ysera, and then go from there.
Yeah, and then just work backwards, right? Kind of have an anti-curve and work backwards. So then, okay, now I can go for my 7th play and so on. So
exactly.
Or at least after a turn of Overload, of course. So I do like this, though, and it looks like Swidz is on board with that plan. Ysera, maybe a bit of an underdog in the last expansion till halfway through, I guess. But seemingly now, probably one of the more powerful cards in Druid, just for the sheer value it generates.
actually a deceptively difficult turn for Jarla right now, because he's kind of committed to whatever weapon he ends up going with here, like Ankar just for some card draw and then replace it immediately with Wrench Caliber afterwards. Doesn't feel great. He does get to swing this turn, swing next turn, and then drop the Wrench Caliber, but there's also the argument of just jam your Wrench Calibers, get them out of the way, drop the Doctor, buff one up, find your Horde Pillager, make sure that guarantees lands on a Wrench Caliber because you haven't played your Ankar, and just have like 10 bombs in your opponent's deck and just win that way without the need to draw your Pirate package out for your Ankar. I think that was debatably a playable line as well.
That's what I was looking at, just because it's like, right, what do you want to do in this matchup? Kill them quickly. What does that the best? Hitting them with a weapon while shuffling the max bombs in the deck. One of the only things I would have thought using the Ankar for first is like, okay, well, you draw more cards, that gets through your deck quicker, but I don't know what Jarla wants to get through his deck to hit right now. He has double Wrench Caliber. I know there's Boom and arguably Rattlegore, but I think they might come down too late after seeing Swidz' opening.
Yeah, considering there's already a 4/12 on the board and 7 dragons in Swidz' deck that are going to be summoned for free, this game is accelerating quite a lot quicker than Jarla would have hoped.
What now?
And again, this is the biggest issue with Ysera for the opponent, is it's a 4/12, so pretty difficult to kill. There are cards, such as Bladestorm, that can kill it. Do you really want to Bladestorm a 4/12? No, because there's going to be a ton more dragons coming out soon, or just other minions. But you also can't just let a 4/12 hit you either. And then Survival of the Fittest is a card, which makes it much bigger than a 4/12. So there's just no good way to do it apart from kill it if you can and hope you get some room to build a board. But I already feel like that time is almost past for Jarla, and it's on turn 5.
Yeah, there was a bit of an issue there in your statement, which was kill it if you can. And I'm kind of struggling with the can part as far as Jarla's concerned right now.
Yeah, in this specific moment, you can't. But I'm just saying as a general rule, there's just no real good answer, right?
Yeah, I was about to say, I think Jarla might just be forced to throw out the Shield Slam because it's never really going to get any better than that. He's going to be getting hit in the face by minions probably every turn for the rest of the game for this point. Does have a second shield block in his hand, but I think he is potentially just setting himself up for a Dr. Krastenov on the following turn to be able to clear through the Ysera comfortably.
What nature speaks through us.
Up to 7, down to 6. Okay, yeah, I was initially a little bit worried about Bladestorm with the play that he was making, but after the trade, he's absolutely fine.
So now priority is just going to be on clearing off the major threat on the board, which is the Gidra, of course.
Yep.
But this is the issue, right? Jarla has to not only stop these big threats, but also try and win the game. So I feel like he wants to be hit in face with this weapon as often as possible. But can he do that? He can risky skipper into the Blood Boil Brute to clear it off. And although he doesn't get to Battle Rage as well, which is a shame, I think he might be forced into that, right?
He could skipper, throw away his Blood Sail Flybooter and Dr. Krastenov into it as well, and then retain a Blood Boil Brute if he feels like that's a better card to have in his hand long term.
I guess
debatable.
I guess
when you're using the skipper.
If you're assuming Ysera portals will go off or Guardian Animals will come, then you can just say Bladestorm, Blood Boil Brute very easily, right? Because if you think the board's going to be full, that's going to be a very easy combo to pull off. So it maybe is better to hold on to it for you. He's going to go for the Krastenov, get this Wrench Caliber stacked up.
I'm going to assume that was deliberate, and Jarla just did not want those 1/1s in his hand. Like he wants the hand space for a Battle Rage later on, for example. But, he only generated 1 Sky Pirate instead of a possible 2.
I would imagine so, because I don't think the Sky Pirates are standing up much to any of these Druid minions in this game.
Oh, actually, no, it was definitely deliberate, because he didn't have a way without coining to not have 10 cards in hand at the end of the turn if he did it the other way around. So yeah, it was 100% deliberate.
Yeah, so it looks like for now, Swidz is just going to continue pushing. He does have the Anubis, which he could commit to, but it is starting to go a little bit wide into the brawl, especially when you would be expecting some portals to go off soon, because we've seen none, right? We've seen 0 of these Ysera portals so far. There's still 27 cards in Swidz's deck, which just looks hilarious. Jarla now has to continue the uphill battle against this board and work out if there's actually anything he can do. I mean, I'm talking about Brawl. There just isn't one in his hand right now. So, you know, I'm talking about Swidz potentially holding on to the Anubis because he has overflow next turn if he wants it anyway to put it down with. But Jarl doesn't even have Brawl, so it's not a huge issue. And I think that's what Jarl has struggled with ever since this Ysera came down. But that's kind of what happens. If your opponent lands an early Ysera and you can't kill it, well, even though it's just a 4 attack, it starts to stack up.
Right. And yeah, the kind of auxiliary minions are still just way too high health to be caught up in a risky skipper turn. So it's not even like risky skipper Blood Boil Brute is going to take care of most of this board state.
Yeah, I think it just has to be the Coin Deathwing, doesn't it? It's not even like a great Deathwing because there's nothing left afterwards, but it's something that clears the board and means that Jarla isn't just dead, but just in time. The portals start kicking out now as Swidz gains at least 1 minion. There's an overflow, and this is still going to be going downhill for Jarla.
So it's just kind of like, hello, dragons? He got 1 dragon, 0 bombs. There are 3 bombs, 7 dragons in his deck. Hello?
Sounds like a weird maths problem, doesn't it?
It does,
3 bombs and 7 dragons.
Yeah.
It's kind of awkward. Like, does he ever actually consider blooming out the Twilight Runner? Because he has enough 0-mana spells to do, if he wants to do some kind of combo next turn anyway. He only overloads for 2 this turn, but has a Vate, if, you know, as some kind of padding for that. So I think I like this. If he's struggling for getting the cards that make the big impact, like the portals or even Survival of the Fittest, why not just get this out now? It's pretty hard to interact with for Jarla. If it draws some extra cards next turn, it's only going to be good.
Ow. Dumped double Iron Bark. Kind of understand the first one because it played really nicely around Blade Storm. So with the 4 attack weapon, if Jarla had Blade Stormed, then the 4/8 would have 4 health, and then you just smack it with the weapon. Great, all clear. Not quite so sure what the second one was for.
Jarla still trying to piece together some kind of win condition here. He does have the Blood Boil Brute, which is a nice little push. But again, the more I look at the deck, it was something I asked when I first saw the list, but I started to wonder, like, why is Brute in there? Does Brute often get enough done? It's looked a little bit underwhelming, although obviously the card is good as a card. It never seems to get a good job done this time.
Is the South Sea Captain just insane? Okay, he needs to Battle Rage. Okay.
Right, he needs the draw.
So otherwise, that actually gives his skipper +1/+1, so he could get a 4th proc off and actually deny the card draw from the Twilight Runner, which would have been pretty insane. But yeah, he absolutely needed to Battle Rage there. Just doesn't have the resources he needs at this point.
Again, just a reminder, Jarla's only on 8 mana right now. Swidz has been on 10 mana for like the last 15 minutes. Yep. It's absolutely insane.
There is still Animals value remaining in Swidz's deck. He is playing Beast Heavy. He's playing double Thresher, double Runner, single Pet.
Yeah, if he goes for the Guardian Animals first, it'll just be one of those good ordering things, because he doesn't want his Twilight Runner to draw him the animals if he can get 2 for 7 mana instead.
Yeah, it's not that
it's whether
simple,
he wants to spend 7 mana.
Right, exactly. He might just draw better things to spend 7 mana on than just summoning a Lake Thresher. It's kind of hard to do because this Lake Thresher is pretty nutty right now. I will concede.
Ah, here come all the other stuff.
Whoa, the way that board suddenly spread out makes me suspicious that there's a lot more dragons coming. Okay, no. It was just the Twilight Runner animation messing with it, I think.
I did think the same, though, to be fair. I was like, we've got 6 more dragons getting kicked out.
Yeah.
But now, most importantly, the survival of the fittest there for Swidz. Not for this turn, of course, but just having that available makes these minions almost immortal.
Brawl is a huge pickup now, though, for Jarla. And suddenly, that might actually just turn the corner into this looking like a somewhat winnable game. Because that's Brawl like number 1. He's not dead. And there's Brawl number 2.
Quartermaster.
Okay.
So he can Quartermaster, Lackey, play a Pirate, and then Brawl if he just really wants to win.
No, one shot. You can Quartermaster, play a Lackey, and Brawl.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, you're right.
Just
stop staring at the Druid's mana.
But yeah, so the fact that he's been, this is his first Brawl and he hasn't had the removal up until this point. Like, if he can relieve some pressure here, that then means that all of that removal then still remains in his deck, right? He still has Lord Barov, he still has his second Brawl, he still has 2 Blade Storms, he still has a Shield Slam in his hand with a Shield Block. Like, suddenly, his possibilities of just killing them all from this point are going through the roof.
Yeah, and because Swidz's Dragon Portals kind of took a while to get going. I mean, he was doing really well, don't get me wrong, in the early game, but it kind of fell off, right? Because Jarla's now caught up to an extent, right? He has the mana, he's drawn through a lot of his deck, so he does have options, and he is just going to leave this Ysera up and hold on to the Brawl. And we can see now the portals coming out and getting a little bit stronger, but this is just scary though, because although he only left the Ysera up, the survival of the fittest is still going to push a ton of damage.
Yeah, I was pretty interested in Brawl Shield Block Shield Slam that turn, just to relieve this pressure. I might be caster visioning on survival of the fittest, and just, I really don't want to take 12 in this scenario by one big minion surviving and then not having the answer to it. Because I think that is certainly now a way you can lose. Because now, if he brawls and loses the brawl, he dies, right? Whereas
he's in trouble, yeah.
That wasn't true on the previous turn. So yeah, I'm not so sure about that.
Yeah, like I said, if he went for the Lackey approach, he could have been very well, not very favoured, so that's completely incorrect. Could have been more favoured to win the Brawl anyway.
Yeah.
So it might not have even needed to leave one up or needed to have other removal, because the minions you play on your side would have acted like semi-removal anyway.
Oh, I completely forgot he had the side quest. Oh, this is a significant amount of damage he's adding to his own hand here as well with the 3 claws.
It's nearly lethal.
Yeah.
Speaking of lethal, though, how many bombs are in Swidz's deck?
3.
Okay. Not quite there yet, but also not too far away if this Brawl gets rid of this taunt minion so he can swing face again.
Well, with the Blade Storm draw, I think, Jarla is back to some level of moderate comfort at least, because he knows he can kill whatever minion ends up surviving. It's kind of huge. Don't mind him just committing extra small minions here, because obviously if he wins the Brawl, that saves a Blade Storm, which is great. Blade Storm probably more valuable to him than this 1/1 Sky Pirate right now.
Yep, looks like it's going to go for a 50-50. Swidz just sitting back, going, okay, well, let's see what happens. Now looks like 3 dragons dead to me, Sol, and that means Jarla gets to swing face, pushes that little bit more damage, puts the bomb in, and with the shield block is going to make him at least safer versus these triple claw attack.
Oh, no, not like this, indeed. Okay, it was the only portal this turn, so it should be, as far as Nosdormu things go, it should be just a fairly normal Nosdormu game from this point. That 1/1 has to die if you're going to put 8 and 9 on the board, Swidz. Yep.
Well, think fast.
Blade Storm, get yourself
Okay,
time.
nice.
Quartermaster, see if the Quartermaster will kill it. If not, smack it with your face.
Will break
Yeah, you know he has triple claw in hand. It never works, right?
Yep.
2 more portals remaining in Swidz deck. 5 bombs now at this point, which means Swidz is theoretically dead at some point in the future.
That's kind of both the worst and best kind.
Yeah, I mean, I
Lucky.
think you'd rather be theoretically dead than literally dead, right?
That's what I mean, the worst and best, because also,
Yeah.
if it's your opponent, then
1.
there's 1 bomb.
The other one. Okay, I'm counting on the other hand
One.
now.
One.
Yeah. Swy is huge. Not quite huge enough.
Yep,
It
the
does
nature of
mean
the
that
claw
Titanic
attacks.
Lackey saved Jarla's life this turn. Although Kobold Lackey or Rush Lackey would have prevented him from having to take the damage on his face in the first place, though, so it was pretty likely he found a solution to the problem off the Lackey.
You know, it'd be really good here, Sol.
Go on.
Dr. Broom.
Mmm.
You just win!
You're not wrong.
Putting that card in all of my decks. Swidz can just go for the wild growth draw if he wants to, right? But does he want to? Because there are those bombs in the deck, and if you can't lethal him this turn, there is a chance, right? Especially because he knows the closer Jarla gets to the bottom of his deck, the more chance he's got another Wrench Caliber or some form of damage available to him.
I mean, yeah, what's the alternative? Like, develop a Twilight Runner that you're going to have to attack with on the following turn anyway? Like, you're drawing cards this game. It's happening.
Go for the draw.
There's no way to avoid it.
Well, he can put him at 10 or below.
There are 4 bombs in his 10 cards. Jarla can make that 5 and put him to the level where he only needs to draw 2 of those cards. It's 2 near as makes no difference 50-50s for Jarla to have immediate lethal this turn.
I wonder.
Is Jarla really considering trading here somehow? It just never works, right?
Might be considering brawling? Like smash
Oh,
face with
maybe.
everything and brawl instead of equipping the Wrench Caliber?
I feel like the Wrench Caliber has to go face because it means he needs a whole 1 less bomb to win. Right?
Yep.
Oh, wait, he trades. With the Armor Smith, that's going to put him to, what, 15? But he knew he was dead,
He's
right?
dead.
Yeah,
Just
he knew
left
he was
himself
dead because he knows the
Dead
claws
on
are there.
port. Yeah, that's a very, very weird play at the end. Very, very weird indeed. He knows Triple Claw kills him, so he just decreased his odds of killing the opponent with bombs
Right.
for absolutely no reason.
And now the armor actually pushes Swidz over 20,
Yeah, right.
which means he needs 1 whole extra bomb instead of 1 less bomb. Wow, that was a weird
Wow.
play.
Portal is a redraw. That's another whiff. He's good. He is
Okay, there
good.
we go.
Swidz is chilling.
Wow, there was a moment there where I mentally prepped a question for you, Saul, of explain to me how the Warrior won this game of Hearthstone. But it did end up with Swidz taking it. But I do think that was maybe there's something we've both missed, but it looked fairly straightforward. If you know there are 3 claws, you just put them as low as possible if it's going to be lethal anyway, right? So weird ending to that game, to a very strange game overall, honestly. But that does put Swidz a 1-0 lead so far with the Mage and Warrior left over, and Jarla's got the whole lineup. But yeah, what a weird game.
Yeah, the only thing I can think is that like the maths is more favorable. So like you reduce your chances of the initial draw killing your opponent by not pushing face, but by forcing your opponent to then triple claw and attack face, maybe you're increasing your odds from that point. I think that's nonsense, but I'm sort of trying to give Jarla credit for having seen something that we didn't. But if that's the case, I don't know what it is. But it was a really interesting matchup for sure, because I was kind of making the point about halfway through that Jarla did such a good job of kind of scrapping with no removal through the mid game and actually being relatively comfortable, that he then had a deck remaining at the end that was just stacked with all of his removal. He still had double Bladestorm, double Brawl, Lord Barov, and hadn't really used any of it. I think after the point where he drew the first Brawl, maybe I would have then been less stringent than he was at that point. I think maybe he could have brawled one turn earlier than he perhaps did when there was a full clear available. And again, maybe that's results oriented because I was staring at Survival of the Fittest in Jarla's hand. But, you know, by Jarla being greedy, he ended up taking 12, I believe, from a Murazond or something, like some 8/8 dragon, which got Survival of the Fittest and smacked him. And that really set him on the path where he was facing down lethal for the entire game. So it was a super interesting matchup for sure. And I think on reflection, both players will probably find spots where they could have improved their chances a little bit more. But regardless of that, it's another loss on the board for Bomb Warrior, which seems to be just about all that we're seeing so far today.
Yep, and it looks like the next matchup is going to be the Mage versus the Druid. We're going to be going into here, and again, it's just cool to dive into all these matchups. And for me, I am enjoying, at least so far today, and I didn't think I'd say this, but I am enjoying seeing a lot of Druid because there's been so much discussion about the deck, and especially some of the cards you see on screen, specifically the Guardian Animals and the Bloom. There's so much discussion within the community about the power level of those cards and that combo and so on. It is great to just see, okay, let's get the best players in the region. And I think most of them submitted Druid. Let's just play it out, right? And see what actually happens. What do the best players do against and with this deck? So I'm excited to see how that continues as we go into game number 2. Swidz on the Mage, Jarla on the Druid. And I see some 1-drops already for Swidz.
And even this is a pretty hot debate in the community right now, this wild growth that Jarla's keeping. Some people will tell you that putting this card in your deck is a sin, and it absolutely should not be in there because it's not a good Hearthstone card. Some people will absolutely swear by it. So, either way, I think, Swidz is going to be looking for something pretty spectacular to fight off the amount of ramp that Jarla is going to be throwing back at him right now.
Yes, as the analyst, I want to ask you for a in-depth breakdown of Jarla's opening hand. And is it good?
So what you do is you play your green card on turn 3, and then you play the other green card the turn after that, and then you just do broken things for the rest of the game.
Sounds good. Sounds pretty good. So Jarla might be in with a chance here. And meanwhile, though, Swidz is getting going. He does, again, just have that cram session as the evocation. I'm a fan of Azure Explorer in this as a pick from the Discovers. I think I pick it probably more than I should. It's probably a little bit slow, but the amount of spell damage, the +2 on that guy, and then you get to discover an additional card as well, seems super, not only value, but just actual raw damage and power as well.
Time runs out on me.
Yeah, it is one of the better options. Most of the time you're looking for Lab Partner or Solarian. But outside of that, it's probably the best option, apart from some very situational, like Violet Warden sometimes against Priest or against Aggro Rogue, where it can be like super clutch in the mid game. But yeah, for the most part, it's like the best of the rest outside of the really cheap ones that you're usually looking for. Whoa! Insta Deathwing, says Swidz. Okay, it's a plan.
I like it. I like it a lot because you see 2 levels to Swidz's hand now, right? He's got his plan A, which is, the mage stuff, right? He's got tons of cards. He can go pretty big here. He's got a lot of options. But then absolute worst case scenario, if he gets to the point where Jarla has played Survival of the Fittest and then Swidz is on the freeze, stall plan, and then he just drops a Deathwing, then that might actually just be enough to finish the game. So because the other options weren't too crazy, I do like this Deathwing as just that emergency button at the end game.
So the Cram Session is going to need to find some heat for Swidz because he needs to start going pretty quickly here. He just saw Wild Growth into Overgrowth on the other side of the board, and his hope, which, you know, is the hope that every player has against Druid in this situation, is just that they just had the ramp and no payoff. That hope is about to be snatched away from him very rapidly. So if he doesn't start doing powerful things very quickly, this Deathwing pick is great and all, but it's not going to do much if you don't get to 10 mana before you're dead.
And I do really like the I'm of the method of get the Solarian down as quick as possible because you want it to be shuffled in if it's going to die, and then you want to draw it as quickly as possible. So I do like this from Swidz. He did have a few options there, but not only board presence, but just getting that Solarian on the board too. Now the animals going to come down here from Jarla and do the usual stuff. Doesn't mean, again, just good positioning there means that Jarla has to take 3 on the Thresher if he wants to actually get the most clear. Or he could just go into the 1-2 and clear that off. Leave it on 5 health and actually maybe just use the Twilight to kill off the Azure.
Yeah, that's the option, right? He can take 3 on the Thresher or 2 on the Twilight. But the headline here is that he got Thresher off the summon, so everything's dead, Dave. All of the work that you've done developing your board up until this point is for absolutely nothing.
And this is where now, as I'm sure many of you watching have been in this situation as not the Druid player, you sit there and go, okay, what do I need to win this game? Because this is where you have to formulate the plan, right? Of like how you beat this insane ramp plus the insane board presence.
Mm-hmm.
And that's really quite hard a lot of the time.
Nigh on impossible, some might say, Raven.
Blood Mage Thanos, again, just one of the go-tos, I guess, for that pick. Not only a cheap spell damage, but also the card draw can help out. Polymorph is available to Swidz, but it looks like he's going to skip over that for the option of just drawing more cards. And I would imagine, Sol, he's looking for some of the freeze tools.
Yeah, freeze tools, devolving missiles, just some way not to be taking 1 million next turn. But hey, guess what? You're probably taking 1 million next turn.
It's really tough, right? Because if there was, let's just make up a board scenario, but if there was one less minion on the board, I would have even have liked to seen Swidz just gone Apprentice, Ray, and just hope the Apprentice lives, because I feel like that's the kind of situation you're in right now against a Druid who has done this. So, but obviously the 2 Rays wouldn't have stopped one of the minions attacking, which means the Sorceress would have died.
See, you totally understood my Marvel reference. You're coming back with players of your own now. I mentioned Apology Man. You bring up Ray. This is all going great. Let's talk Marvel.
See,
Yeah.
I could talk Marvel, but not the way you mean.
Yeah. I mean, I have 2 minions alive. It does get punished really hard by devolving missiles. That is true.
It does, but so what? It's kind of the response,
That's
right?
kind of
Because,
where I'm at, yeah.
Jarla has all the room in the world to just go survival of the fittest, right? And just don't care. Why not do it now? Because then next turn he could go. He's got options of Mount Cellar with some spells. Idra, he could just slam the massive Ysera. He is going to go for a wider push instead, but. Honestly, I was with you there, Sol. Just play the card and hit him pretty hard in the face.
I get this. Like, I am a survival of the fittest gamer. Like, if I have minions that can attack and I'm able to cast that card, I'm genuinely jamming it. But like, if any amount of this board sticks, like, we've already seen Jarla once give his Gidra +14/+14 on a turn, right? Like, maybe he's just got the taste for it. Maybe that's just where he lives now.
He just likes to feel the rush.
Yeah, exactly. But like, if any amount of this board sticks going into the next turn, he just has lethal, right? But personally, I would just be jamming the survival and getting the job done. He's getting picked apart quite effectively here.
I think I would just very stupidly be very afraid of like, oh, I bet he's just like generated a counter spell, hasn't he? You know, it's just stuff like that. It's like, well, then I'm stuck. Polymorph is castable.
Time runs out on me.
This really is the most fascinating part of the mage so far for me, is just watching when people play Evocation.
Yeah.
Because I don't think anyone does it the same, right? Like, I think all the players, at least so far, have been playing it in different spots and saving it or utilizing it for like potentially one extra spell or something. You know, it's pretty crazy how it's been played.
That was a pretty ugly evocation, honestly. Didn't give him any playables, was not able to get the Mana Giant to come down. He just has to end the turn with the Polymorph because he has to deny the Mount Seller value, but yeah. Survival of the Fittest does end up landing on 3 minions instead of 2, so you can call that a victory from Jarla's side if you would like to.
Yep, and this was the issue you were talking about earlier with the Deathwing pick. Although the idea is there, can you get to 10 mana? Is the real question. And it doesn't look like Swidz is going to be able to, because even if this Katrina Murta summons a random taunt that Swidz hasn't played somehow, it's still just not going to be enough, is it? Which means it looks like Jarla is going to be able to even up this series. And once again, this Druid just impressing me a little bit more than I thought it would.
Yeah, he needed, like, I don't know, Walking Fountain plus Turalion off that Conjurer's Calling, like something like that. Double huge minion that impacted the board state immediately. Without that, he wasn't going to get it done over the line. So it's, like I said, it's very, very tough. I said it immediately as soon as I saw the Wild Growth Overgrowth hand. He needs to do something really spectacular. Like that Sorcerer's Evocation turn, he needed to have done that on like turn 3 and got a Mana Giant to come down to compete with that.
Sure.
Like that's sometimes the level of broken that you have to achieve with that mage deck to compete with the good Druid draws. But it is capable of it. Like that's not the only draw that I can describe that does something that Druid can't compete with. You know, there are a few that can happen. So as much as the crazy Druid starts are there, the crazy mage starts are there to compete with it as well.
And again, I've talked about it all day so far, but the way players are piloting this mage, I think, just will show or not show levels of experience, right? And how comfortable they actually are with all these different scenarios that can happen. So very, very interesting to watch overall. We've got plenty more of this series coming up as it is only 1-1. But we're going to go to a quick break while we set up game number 3. So don't go anywhere. We're going to return to continue Swidz versus Jarla.
I'm so bad at this.
I am weird and I have talents, but that doesn't combine the weird talents thing maybe enough.
I don't have any weird or random talents, that's why I'm playing Hearthstone.
I used to be able to do a backflip. Nope, nothing.
Like, can you move your eyebrows in a weird way, or wiggle your ears without moving the rest of your face, or do a handstand?
Nope.
Splits?
Yes, completely trash.
I think the only talents I have are probably like mathematics, physics stuff, and playing Hearthstone. So,
Can you do quick math in your head?
yes.
What's 17 times 42?
$874.
Nice. Yeah, I didn't check if it was right.
Wait, that's not right. You couldn't you ask me this yesterday? It would have been a lot easier.
We are back and ready to continue this series. Swidz got a win with his Druid, and Jarla got a win with his Druid. So far, Druid seems to be doing pretty good. Again, we will probably keep harping on about this as long as it keeps happening, but the Warriors seem to be struggling so far today, at least in Europe, and both players do, of course, have that mage left. So, again, I think this story might be just who's going to take a win on that Warrior.
Yeah, it does seem like the series is shaping up that way for sure, although the mages are by no means a certain win on either side. I certainly do think the Bomb Warrior can lock out a lot of what Mage is trying to do if Mage doesn't get the explosive stuff quickly enough. So then if you think like each Mage has to face a Mage Mirror, which is obviously losable, and then Bomb Warrior, which I think is a losable matchup as well. I think both players from either side really don't have any like free roll matchups for the two decks that they have remaining, which are matched on either side.
Yeah, it's really tough. I'm even just looking at these lists, and again, this is just going to change as we go. But there are so many just tiny differences in some of these builds. Even although I think that Europe at least have just jumped on this sort of single Conjurer's Calling as like the way to do the big power plays on board with Mage. I just see just all the different one drops just blow my mind right now. I feel like at this point I'm like, someone just decide what's the best. But we are going to be seeing the Mage versus Warrior. We do have a glance at Swidz' Bomb Warrior list. We've seen a lot of Bomb Warrior so far today. No doubt you'll be getting used to it. But kicking it off here, Jarla, One Thief, Conjurer's Cram Session, and Mana Cyclone. What do you make of this, and what do you think the keeps are going to be here, Sol?
I certainly don't want any of this apart from possibly the Cram Session. I've been torn on keeping Cram with no spell damage in hand already because obviously card draw is very important. Jarla goes a completely different way and keeps One Thief Mana Cyclone, which I think was very unexpected from my perspective.
One Thief was the card I was going to ask you about because I personally keep One Thief because I feel like there are so many cards in the deck that you are going to combo that turn 2 or 3. And again, just generating spells feels good. But I can hear an argument for the maybe even the full mulligan there. But I'm not sure about the Cyclone. I think I was a little bit surprised from Jarla there, just keeping a Cyclone with like literally 0 spells apart from the coin.
Yeah, personally, the way I've been playing the deck so far is that I would rather have the Sork in my hand than keep a card that needs Sorcerer's Apprentice and wait for the Sorcerer's Apprentice. I'd rather mulligan more aggressively for the Sork. Because if you have the Apprentice, there's like 5 or 6 different cards that you can draw that pay off your Sorcerer's Apprentice, whereas if you keep a Mana Cyclone, you need exactly the Sorcerer's Apprentice to pay that off, if that makes any sense. And I personally have not been keeping One Thief very often, unless I have a hand that already says, like, okay, my hand is Lab Partner, One Thief. Cool, I'll keep that. I'll play Lab Partner on turn 1, and then I'll play Lab Partner One Thief on turn 2. You know, like, unless the curve is already dictated in that way, I have to.
And Swidz, on the other hand, has got this relatively quick opening for the deck, honestly. Like, deck isn't really, as often getting these early starts. Not like back in the day when we were talking about Town Criers into, rush minions and so on. This is pretty quick and might help out with some of these earlier turns against Jarla on the mage here. Frostbolt and a really nice pickup just to say no to a minion. Although Mirror Image could help as well in the little bit of a later game to try and either make Blade Storms awkward or make Swidz have to like soak weapon swings into, and it is just a cheaper spell.
I don't know how many similarities this matchup shares with Aggro Rogue, for example. Like, they are somewhat similar in that they make big weapons and try and hit you in the face with them. But Frostbolt is enormous in the face rogue matchup because it just literally reverses the clock when they're trying to race you. You just Frostbolt them in the face and hit them in the face with your minions. Whether that might be a factor here, I don't know. But I just wanted to bring it up because you said, Frostbolt to say no to a minion. It might be Frostbolt to say no to a Wrench Caliper, where it might actually end up being more important.
Okay, now we're talking. I get honestly, I love it because now I'm like, right, can you get Shenvala on curve? Can you do Shenvala next turn? If he's gonna wait till next turn, should he try and work a Mana Cyclone in? Can he do this? Can he do? And that's literally every turn with this mage deck. It is insane, and I don't envy the players actually sitting having to work this out turn after turn in some pretty high stakes matches.
I like this line though. I think if Shenvala is coming down any turn, it's next turn. So I think the line here was Frostbolt, the Armor Smith, play the One Thief, and I think you bump the Risky Skipper with your 1/1 just to deny any potential skipper value. And now you are set up with potentially 5 mana available. You're set up for Shenvala on the following turn if you want to go for it with Shenvala coin 1 mana spell, 1 mana spell.
And also the quickest evocation pick I have ever seen from Jarla. Maybe the quickest thing I've ever seen just from Jarla.
Yeah,
full stop.
Yeah, good point.
He's not the fastest player in the world, but that evocation wasn't even a thought. That was just a reaction.
The problem is, okay, that's pretty perfect. I was going to say the problem is Jarla now needs a different 1 mana spell because you don't really want to say like Shenvala coin devolving missiles evocation.
A 1-drop.
That's my turn. Yeah. Whether or not he wants to go for it here, I don't know. He might be looking at lining up the Mana Cyclones more so than the Shenvala in this position. But it does look like a pretty good opportunity to get some pressure going. Threat of Bladestorm on the other side is scary though, I guess.
It's oh, okay, that changed a few things. Solarian trade, yeah. Oh, sorry, Solarian ping. I forgot about the reduction, of course. Yeah, that's the thing. It's like, well, it could set up some good pressure this turn. It's like, but could it set up better pressure next turn? You know, and that's literally the question every single time.
This is a huge W if he gets the Bladestorm out here on this board state. An enormous W. Wow. Okay, we take those.
So what is Swidz thinking there? Because Swidz did just have Shield Slam if he was that scared of a Solarian.
I think that is exactly what he's thinking, is that he wants to remove that board to protect his Shield Slams for future turns. He doesn't want to let small minions stay on board and hit him in the face. He wants to make sure he has those Shield Slams as guaranteed answers to big threats coming down over the coming turns.
Okay. Now Jarla can make a slightly bigger board here and a slightly bigger threat level. Again, it's just about how he does it. One of the issues, though, with Shenvala is you do have to commit to it before you start cycling spells, right?
Yeah.
So you can't just play Magic Trick. Well, okay, technically, you maybe could play Magic Trick first, but you know what I mean. You've got to, like, kind of just drop the Shenvala and say maybe this is going to be value. Jarla is going to go for the Magic Trick first, which means he might bail on this completely and wait even longer for the Shenvala.
Yeah. Again, Shenvala wasn't great there. Like, Devolving Missiles isn't even castable in that position, so he'd have to get something off the Magic Trick, which is a risk he'd be running. As you were describing, he'd have to play the Shenvala first. Again, he doesn't want to be using Evocation as part of his Shenvala turn here, because he's not really going to get any value out of Evocation, which it's just too good a card standalone to be throwing into a turn like that. So, yeah, I think, you know, the turn he ended up doing here is pretty reasonable. But again, I want to point out that his hand is just kind of bottlenecked by not having a Sorcerer's Apprentice, which is why I'm a big fan of just mulliganing far more aggressively for that card.
Yeah, I will say, any game I felt really bad about with Mage is the games I don't draw Sorcerers. That's it. They're the games I easily feel the worst about. It's not, oh, you know, I didn't draw this other card, or, oh, I didn't get burned from my Discovers. It's just, I didn't draw Sorcerer's Apprentice, so I didn't get to, well, I would say play the deck, honestly.
Yeah.
Without that card, that's literally what makes the whole deck work.
I didn't draw Sorcerer's Apprentice, so everything I did felt fair. That's not right.
What is this?
Yeah.
Again, though, it is starting to get to the point where the more Jarla... Again, this isn't a bad thing, but the slower Jarla plays, the more armors that Swidz is getting, right? The more hero powers he's getting, the more time he's getting to draw. The slower the game goes. I'm not sure who that favors. I think I'd lean over to it favoring Swidz if you can get some bombs rolling and a Blastmaster Boom and so on. Because right now, again, without a Sorcerer's Apprentice, everything Jarla does is just not going to be quite as powerful as it could be.
Yeah, I'd be inclined to agree. I think up until turn 10 or so, the mage is still very equipped to keep going, go very late against this deck. Once we get to turn 12, turn 13 or so, I think that is probably where the warrior will just be taking over and threatening lethal with bombs. But it's just a matter of whether Swidz can find enough resources to last that long, because his hand is really not looking all that great right now, unless it's very easily solvable by just a Battle Rage appearing, for example, but right now, it doesn't really answer a lot of board states in its current form. Wow.
I didn't expect that.
Neither did
I'll
I.
throw that out there right now. Did not expect to just see Shenvala pass. It's just going to get dealt with.
Obviously, we can see that he played Ice Barrier Shenvala that turn. Swidz might just as reasonably think that was Counterspell Shenvala, which would actually make a lot of sense. That's a very realistic bluff, right? Because it's something your opponent would actually think you would do. Play
Right.
Shenvala and then try and protect it with a counterspell. It just so happens Swid's hand didn't really have the option of wasting a resource, which is maybe something that Jarla was trying to set up there, is that he'd get 2 resources out of Swidz, a bad one and then an actual answer to the Shenvala. Because Swid's only option was to double shield slam the Shenvala if it was counterspell. That's all he had.
Yeah. On that note, are you surprised he didn't swing face first to maybe check for Ice Barrier?
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, that's a good point.
I just don't know. It's one of those things where, does that actually always work out to just be correct?
Yeah.
To just swing? Because even if it's counterspell, you just shield slam again, right? So you never have to swing the weapon into the minion anyway.
Right. But then, the inverse of that is, no matter what happens, you point a shield slam at that Shenvala,
Correct.
It's just always happening.
Jarla now, I think he generally is just working towards Evocation saving him at some point, because although it's like Swidz is breathing down the neck of Jarla here and winning the game anytime soon, Jarla isn't. I feel like he's not achieving much each turn. Again, as we mentioned, the longer that goes on, I think the worse it's game for him.
Long years I have studied.
And that doesn't look good either.
Works
This
against
card is incredibly unimpressive without Sorcerer's Apprentice, without
Mirror-
10 mana available at least.
Mirror Entity, though. Swidz doesn't get to play his on-curve Deathwing.
Oh no, disaster.
I mean, I'd be upset if I could play Deathwing on curve against this deck.
His hand is just continuing to do absolutely nothing for Jarla.
The Conjurers does help, I feel. It does actually give him an option if he can get a minion to hit, of course. But it is something that, put some effort onto the board and makes Swidz think about stuff. But the problem is now, the Icicle, again, Jarl doesn't need removal, so he might just aim at going for that Evocation again next turn, which is super rough.
I wonder.
Swidz, on the other hand, having I would say a splash of unluck himself, because he isn't getting hold of any Wrench Calibers this game. So his Boom's stranded, he's got another Horde Pillager, but if he just plays it soon, then it's just going to equip another Ankar. So again, even though Swidz is doing okay, he could have had some bombs cooking by now and some Wrench Calibers, and this Boom could have caused actually a huge issue for Jarla, even if it only made a couple of Boom bots.
After much debate, Swidz does choose to take the extra damage on his face, unless on the minion. Which I would argue is almost always correct there. I don't think you can really work out every discrete breakpoint that there might be from all your opponents', Cyclone cards and possible Evocation cards and everything else. Just, do the generic good thing. Take the damage on your face, unless on the minion.
Is it ever devolving missiles and hope you can flame strike the board and then next turn you Jandis into Conjurers?
The problem is if you Jandis, you immediately blow up one of your minions with the Risky Skipper, right?
No. Oh, you could trade the Risky Skipper into the whatever the Blood Bowl Brute becomes, right?
Okay.
this is the simpler way to do it. My only thought about it is a fireball is useful for other things, whereas a flame strike feels relatively dead in this matchup. And the flame strike's a card in hand that isn't an evocation card later, right? If you can't get rid of it.
Yeah, that's fair. Having to use a Devolving Missiles and another card in that scenario versus just a Flame Strike might just flip it on its head, though. And I think, now at least Jarla's drawn the Jandis. He doesn't necessarily need to be all in on that evocation from this point. He actually has a plan B where he can, he doesn't necessarily need to do something next turn. He can spend a couple of turns getting cards out of his hand now.
Ooh, nice.
Pray for mercy. Cry to
Start. I'd almost imagine Jarla would take resources here over more removal spells at this point. Yeah, that actually ended up pretty trash, to be honest.
Yeah,
I needed some gas.
Any of the freezes and would have been fine. Not all of them, though.
Yeah.
All of them, slight overkill there. Easy removal there from Swidz. And again, fighting back onto the board. Quartermaster being played with this risky skipper. Opens up the battle rage and gets Swidz a few more resources to play around with. Yeah, Theorolaki's not too shabby either, actually. I think he's just wondering where his wrench calibers are.
Yeah. This
Two
is
in
a
bottom
really
12.
bizarre game of Hearthstone.
Arguably 4 in bottom 12, right? Because hasn't he got 2 Corsair Cash left?
He has 2 Corsair Cash, yeah.
4 out of his 12 are effectively wrench calibers.
Yep. Oof. He's just already committed his Blastmaster Boom.
What makes
Just to have a 7/7 on play.
Oh, pretty good.
Pretty good indeed. Well above average.
This also makes me feel bad because normally I get a really bad minion and a good minion, so this decision isn't hard. Whereas this is like, oh, well, hang on. Are there mind games involved? Because you'd naturally make the 5/5 the one that gets insta-killed. But Swidz would know that. So then the decision is, do you make it the 6/5? And he does.
works against me.
Again, more options here. You can Ray of Frost Icicle and actually get a card draw as well, which is a pretty big deal.
I think he has
or you
to,
could go
yeah.
for the Ray of Conjurer's Call instead.
Your petty matters are no challenge.
Wow, so many Conjurer's Callings now. Really wants to be able to find a target for these in the near future, so maybe he should have just jammed one there, but he just, like, he can't really leave that board state up either, right? You kind of want to deal with the sources of small damage on your opponent's side when you play this card. If you generate it into a board full of 1/1s, obviously it's terrible because they can just very easily pick apart your minions. So
Right.
leaving a risky skipper is a disaster. Leaving a 2/1 even is kind of arguably pretty bad, but Jarla doesn't have the luxury to play around that in the situation. Yep, and now you see Swidz very much in his own head about what Jarla decided to do on that
Look at
turn.
Jarla's face. He's like, it's a tough choice, isn't it?
This is where you start mousing over one of them, either the right one or the wrong one, depending on how much bait you want to throw to your opponent.
Is this where Jarla gets on comms with Swidz and he's like, there are 3 options. I will open one option. One option is not the thing.
Right,
it's the
right,
2/1.
yeah,
Now,
exactly,
which one
yeah.
do you want to pick? Do you want to
Would you-
swap?
Would you like to swap? Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, God.
How did he know?
Congratulations! You win the prize of not losing the game.
I'm going to predict that if Janice Barrel sticks around, I'm going to be really sick of that discussion by about week 3. Just so you know, Raven. Just in advance.
Cannot wait, because if
Okay.
it sticks around, I'm going to create that discussion through to week 4.
Okay. Deal.
And Andrew's coin going to start kicking off now.
So that's
just
a
did it again,
mortuary
right?
machine. Well, it is an 8/8. Have you noticed it's an 8/8?
have you noticed there is still 3 Conjurer's Call-ins for Jarla, and he only has those 2 minions?
But have you noticed the other ones are 3/5?
Do them both! You've got enough. I mean, not this turn, but... See, look at that. More or less the same stats.
What's against me?
What? Crazy logic is this?
Well, one's got right. Dimensional Ripper for Swidz. What's even left in?
Oh!
Okay.
Alright. I mean, obviously, when you compare it to what Big Warrior does, that's not very exciting, but this deck is not Big Warrior. So that outcome, I imagine, has got to be pretty freaking strong for Swidz.
I also think in this matchup and a few others, this actually might well be one of the better Dimensional Rippers in Big Warrior, even. Because if you then get... Okay, Kargath's one of the better ones. But if you can get, like, even just one Kargath out, the actual health gain against Mage is actually insane.
Right.
And now... Conjurer's Calling in a dream.
I think he crammed. Yeah, I think you just go fishing for mana giants before you do anything too crazy. Okay, Astromancer Solarian, the natural one from the deck now.
I think I do like Jarla potentially aiming to clear some of this hand out, because this evocation has sat there for a while now.
I will crush your delusion.
And I think he just needs to start getting it cast and get some big spells, or at least hope for some big spells, because he is slowly petering out here. And as I said at the start of the game, Swidz is cool to just hero power up, right, and just sit back, play defensive.
Yeah, kind of. I mean, Jarla does still have 2 Sorcerer's Apprentice left in his deck. Still has 2 Mana Giants left in his deck, so his, evocation payoff cards have really just not been coming out. But again, I kind of go back to the mulligan and think, how important was just having a Mana Cyclone versus those extra cards that you can see for Sorcerer's Apprentice in the early game, because it really is the card that just makes this deck tick. What if you just fatigue the Bomb Warrior? You ever considered that, Raven?
Does that work? Because that involves them having like multiple wrench calibers?
What now?
You are functionally 2 cards ahead in fatigue right now. You have 3 more cards in your deck, but one of them is a bomb. You're about to put a Solarian Prime back in, so that puts you 3 cards ahead in fatigue.
True. I mean, it's definitely worth considering.
Like, I'm not sure you're winning on pressure right now, is my point, right? So, don't you just have to find some kind of alternate plan?
Yeah, Prime.
I mean, that is a pretty good alternate plan, yeah.
Yes, the Flame Strike's gone. Okay, that's a good job for Jarla. Getting rid of that, I think, actually was important. That is a whole card space in hand.
Yeah.
And instead of having to just Flame Strike an empty board, he actually got some use out of it, so not too shabby.
I love that entrance cry, by the way. He just
New
pops
air
off.
translate
It's
it.
great. He just pops off. That's all he's doing. He's just flexing.
Well, there's your favorite card.
Mm-hmm.
And speaking of popping off, does Jarla just have to go? I think he does, right?
Yep. Get this
Evolving
thing
missiles.
nice and devolved.
Mm-hmm.
That is nice and small. Love to see that.
And look at this. A good chunk of mana here. I think he can actually just hold the Conjurers as well, right? He's not going to cast that. He's going to use the Evocation first, give him 8 mana to play with.
Yep, agreed.
Years I have studied.
Look for the big
Oh.
pop-off cards, which he has found. That's great. Oh, no additional prime off the spell damage, though. He did find himself a deep freeze, which is why he left himself with so much mana open, so that he would have the option to play those cards. And I don't think any collection of his other options are more appealing to me than that deep freeze.
No, I saw 2 flame strikes and was nearly sick, because that was unfortunate. Like, 2 flame strikes in there is rough, but as you said, the deep freeze does save the day.
It's killing the Chromatic Egg, even though it's currently his best Conjurer's Calling target. Interesting. Just doesn't want it to win a brawl, I guess. But even then, like, you conjure it if it wins the brawl. Interesting.
Swidz does have that brawl available. Probably has to consider using it pretty quickly, as suddenly all that armor he worked up has gone. He's now on a more reasonable health total.
Yeah.
Jarla will win if Swidz doesn't respond to this very, very quickly, and there's no source of 1 damage to combo with Lord Barov, which means that he can't clear this board easily. It just has to be brawl, right? Oh wait, does he just Barov brawl? That gets the job done, right?
Does that not seem like overkill? Why? Swidz is at 29. Like, can we just find just brawling and leaving a minion up at the end of the time?
I guess I was thinking, what if an elemental lives? But I guess he just death wings it the turn after, I suppose. Because an elemental is an issue, right? If it just freezes his face forever, then that's like a dramatic problem. But I guess he does have the answer with the Deathwing.
Yeah.
Are you ready for this?
Alright. Seems like Jarla is hard committed that this Conjurer's Calling is being used on Mana Giant this game, so in that case, removing his Chromatic Egg from the board does make sense. If he'd already decided in his head, I'm not Conjurer's Calling anything but Mana Giant, then sure. Making sure that thing can't win the brawl makes perfect sense on the previous turn.
I wonder.
Now Deathwing does do the job. And I don't think you're expecting Deathwing to get many attacks in, generally, in this matchup, even if it does clear up a board. There are so many options for freeze, transform effects, even hard removals, such as polymorph. But he's going to go for a bit of a different route here, get that weapon equipped, go for the Blade Storm to clear, and most importantly, I think, just shuffle bombs in, because right now, Saul, Jarla's getting low on cards.
Yeah.
And he doesn't really have a way to stop dying from bombs, right? Like, it's not like Swidz can armor up and help with fatigue. Like, Mage doesn't really have access to that outside of arguably Ice Barrier.
There's really nothing going on in Jarla's remaining deck. He has 2 Mana Giants with the Conjurer's Calling. Sure. Likely getting countered by the Deathwing, and then he has a Solarian Prime. Other than that, there is not a great deal of value. He does have 1 Primordial Studies remaining, which he can then get another Solarian off and then another Solarian Prime off. But it's looking like he is just going to run out of value and die to these bombs.
Yeah, I don't want to be the one to throw this out there, but this may just be a prime into box territory for Jarla, or at least we're getting close to it. And again, I'm not even joking. That's probably what he's after soon. And having that Kargath just locked and loaded for Swidz as well is just nice. Not at any point, but often he can just choose to gain that armor whenever. There's the giant. And let's see if it pays off for Jarla holding on to this Conjurers just for this card. Second time we've seen Beastman.
Second time we've seen Grom.
Ping.
I mean, that's great and everything, but I think how unexcited we are off Grom coming off Conjurer's Calling should go to show that that's probably still not going to have that big an impact this game.
Just going to go with the safe trade away here. No expectations for Deathwing to try and live or anything. I think Swidz is more than okay, especially with his Kargath in hand, to say Deathwing is just 8 mana, clear the board next. No problem.
Armor made to fit.
Well, there's one card and one card only. That's not true. I guess you can take the Discover a Spell Guy, the new Azure Drake thing, into Puzzle Box of Yogg-Saron. That's also an acceptable outcome. That's none of those things.
Or he could Azure Explorer into Kaligos.
Into Puzzle Box of Yogg-Saron, yeah.
The lesson here is it all ends in a puzzle box.
Yeah, there's 4 cards left, but I'm going to be honest, when I sort of suggested fatiguing Swidz, I may have forgot to account for the fact that he already had 2 Kargath Primes in his deck. Which also goes to show you that he was actually miles ahead in fatigue without those 2 extra shuffles going in there, if you consider how far ahead he was already. But yeah, like, fatiguing those 2 things might end up being a far bigger problem than trying to fatigue bombs would be.
Oh, well, this Kargath won. And now, though, Jarla again. Second Firebrand, okay. Well, he can clear off Kargath. But there's more where that came from. The second one from Swidz can clear up the Firebrand. And again, not only kill it, but gain a ton of armor him as well and push him further and further away from being too scared about this game. Jarla, again, though, does have options. Swidz is running out of cards. Oh,
It's just another natural
I forgot
Kargath.
about natural Kargath. There are no extra ingredients in that Kargath.
No.
I don't know why. It's just one of those weird, like, things that get lodged in your mind where, like, I think Dimensional Ripper pulls the minion out of the deck, and it just doesn't.
Commencement
I don't know. I know
does,
this,
the
but
other
I also
effects
don't know
don't.
this.
Yeah. Yeah, so commencement does and the other effects do not. It's actually pretty important distinction to know if you are playing or playing against. Oh no! Forget everything that I just said. Devolve into a stealth minion so that the stealth minion is no longer a legal target and then Solarium Prime polymorphs itself. Get out of my game.
It's a lesson learned where I think a general assumption way people would explain Solarian is, oh, it targets enemies if it can. Well, it's not if there's enemies there, it's if it can target them. Yeah, if you can target an enemy with that thing. But that is going to be the game. Swidz taking a win on the Warrior. And again, although I can't say the Warrior looked impressive that much, but most importantly, it got a win right now. So that's just job done for Swidz, because honestly, just from what we've seen today, if I'm one of these players with a Warrior in the lineup, I just hope you can get the win with it and get it out of the way, because that is the scary one for me. The Druid, the Mage feels much more comfortable. So Swidz is looking good now with only his Mage left to take the series with.
Yeah, and honestly, I'm going to go back to it again, but I didn't like the mulligan in that game from Jarla. I think Mage it plays like 25 medium cards in the deck. And I think you should keep almost none of those medium cards because they're all medium. You're going to draw more of them at some point during the game. You really, really, really want the 5 good ones in your opening hand. So personally, I mulligan a lot more aggressively than Jarla seemed to do in that scenario. And I'm not going to say if he throws away 1 or 2 more cards, he instantly gets the Sorcerer's Apprentices that were buried in the bottom half of his deck, or some of the card draw that he didn't have the entire game. But I do think you should mulligan slightly more aggressively. Seem to there, I think.
Yeah, I think it's one of those, when I speak to players who don't play tons of the game or they're new or whatever, I'll give them a deck and give them a very sort of basic mulligan strategy. And it's normally, if it's not these cards, throw them away. Right? Yeah, obviously there's nuance and everything. Once you get to a bit of a higher level, you understand the game more. But again, if you're new to this deck and you've not played much, I would say a general tip is to, if the card you're looking at is not an apprentice, you're never going to go that far wrong if you mulligan them away to try and get an apprentice. So yeah, just a general tip for the list if you fancy trying it out here to maybe mimic some of these Grandmasters and the law players on ladder. But again, it looks like we are going to check out the same matchup but backwards, as it's going to be Jarla on the Bomb Warrior and Swidz on that mage that he has left.
Yes, and certainly Jarla will be hoping that Swidz has exactly the same woes of not really having the card drawer or the Sorcerer's Apprentice early, and Swidz will have been looking at that game the entire way through, where he was just free coasting with his Bomb Warrior, thinking, well, I really hope my mage games aren't like this. So either way, we're about to find out, and Swidz is going to need to do something slightly more impressive than what Jarla managed to put together in that previous game.
Yeah, and this is where I do wonder that maybe the deck does end up becoming more of a refined game plan. I know like the fun and maybe even the strength of the deck is how varied each game can be, but that problem is, okay, well, if I'm against a deck similar to Warrior that has this kind of durability to it, then, well, what about those games where I don't get the exact like late game powerhouse outcomes I need? Well, in fact, do I just lose then? Because otherwise, like maybe the deck can be just tweaked a little bit to say, okay, similar to what we saw with the Giants, right? I think the deck went no Giants to then one Conjurers as just a slight progression of let's actually make something that can consistently happen in any given game. And we are going to get into the next game. Swidz on that mage only has to win this, and he does survive. Whereas Jarla going to be on the bottom on that warrior, and it looks like he's keeping hold of an Ankar. Not too bad. It does mean any Corsair cash he picks up does get hold of those bombs, or the Wrench Caliber, should I say. But again, Wrench Caliber against Mage right now feels fairly slow. And kind of just the wrong shape in every way. I don't know why.
Really? Oh, I feel like Wrench Caliber lines up pretty well against a fair few minions that come down in this matchup if you need to hit minions.
Yeah, I don't know. I think it's because I feel like by the time you play it, because it's 4 mana, you're already hitting the stage where you can be frozen, or, you know, there's actually... I think my issue is, if they don't play minions, do you swing face with it to get the bombs in? Or do you save it for when they do play minions? Because, again, in some mage matchups, or in some mages, they actually hold off for the big power spike turns a little bit later. So I don't know. I just think Wrench Caliber is just a tough one to use in this matchup. Here, though, Jarla having access to this Ankar is going to be pretty huge to help clean up some of these very early minions. Also, though, Switz's opening hand, although I would say not fantastic, does have some of the key cards. The Evocation is there, and Arcane Intellect is there as well to help draw through some of the deck. But is this going to be enough to put some early pressure, or would you want to see Swidz take this quite slow with this opening hand?
I wonder.
It looks like a kind of hand that needs to develop some resources before it can really do anything. I do like, I wanted to talk about his mulligan as well, obviously. I do like that he has the Arcane Intellect, because the lack of card draw was clearly something that Jarla was struggling with in the previous series. But personally, I think he can afford to take it a little bit slower than perhaps he is doing with this Coin Firebrand line. I don't think necessarily it is extremely aggressive, yeah, and I don't think necessarily needs to get a huge amount of damage through in the early game as long as he can stay high on resources, which his hand certainly looks like it's able to do at the moment.
And the funny thing here is, Swidz has basically wrote off the Firebrand spell burst, right? Because you're not telling me, oh, my opponent's not got a minion, I'm not going to play Arcane Intellect this turn, right? It's just going to happen, and the spell burst does go off no matter what. If you cast a spell, the spell burst happens, so that's just gone. It's a spider tank, which, you know, Swidz hasn't misplayed or anything. That's what he wanted from the card with that previous play.
Yeah, he just wanted a 3-4 beating stick that he could hit his opponent with, which, I mean, sure, it's fine if that's the way he wants to play this matchup, and more power to him.
What now?
You know, do you think Jarla's holding off on thinking about whether he wants to actually save the swing for the dock next turn?
Still think he'd much rather be hitting that on a Wrench Caliber, right?
He would, but we've seen Wrench Calibers in the bottom 10 tall, so
That's fair. Yeah.
Maybe he's worried.
All right, he's just going to go ahead and Horde Pillager his Ankar then, in which case he is leaving himself open for that Dr. Krasanov on the following turn.
And to be fair, it still gives him the choice, right? Because this Horde Pillager, although you could argue would be wasteful if this was the case, it does challenge the Firebrand. And also, if Jarla like top decks a Wrench Caliber next turn, he can take a view, right? He could swing and then equip the Wrench Caliber and then dock the turn after.
You fight me, you get burned.
Swidz clearly committed to the tempo line this game.
Which again, I mean, I don't know about you, but especially Bomb Warrior, we're still kind of working out how to play the matchups right now.
Yeah.
I think there's still a lot to be discovered, and there's two things, right? One, I would argue that Jarla went quite slow in the previous game, and it didn't go well for him. Swidz is going faster, but this deck is more built to deal with aggro, right? You know, with the Blade Storms, with the Shield Slams, the weapons. So it's just interesting where, like, Swidz is playing like an aggro deck against a deck with removal tools. But he did just see the slower approach also did not go well.
Yeah, and this is kind of my big concern with Swidz line up until this point, is that's a heck of a Blade Storm to give your opponent. I was kind of fine with Coin Spider Tank, hit your opponent, you know, keep their armor total under control, deny shield slams, all that kind of good stuff. Like, sure, I'm down with it. Dropping a second one just alongside it with, you know, no breakpoint and just giving your opponent free Blade Storm, I don't know, it seems a little bit suspicious.
Also, as well, Blade Storm versus Mage doesn't consistently work either, because loads of the minions are, you know, 1, 2, 3, sort of varying health totals. So it's not as if the, you know, Swidz might be thinking, oh, well, there's an early Blade Storm gone, sweet, it's not going to destroy me in the late game. It's like, well, it often doesn't versus Mage, because their minions are so random at most parts that there's no clear, like, okay, they make 3 8/8s in there that can be cleared off pretty easily. Well, there's a Wrench Caliber, so now we can see Jarla take a view here. He can actually just go for Wrench Caliber in either this turn or the near future, and then have the dock to actually start giving the additional benefits there. Or he could just go for it now if he feels he needs it to help clear off this minion. I do think Jarla is missing some armor here right now, though. I think he'd like to be able to work in this shield slam this turn, but with no shield block, no armor smith to go with a risky skipper, it's just not going to be good enough.
Yeah, and that's where the upside has come from with the, you know, the aggro line from Swidz. And like I said, I kind of liked the first one on reflection because it did just function as a really nice beating stick and keep the armor under control, which you're now seeing the effects of a few turns down the line. I'm just not quite sure whether the second one was super necessary over, you know, for more arcane intellect, more resource generation, dig through the deck, find some power turns. We will wait and see.
Here, though, kind of feels bad to just play Jandis into a Blood Bowl Brute here, because you know even post 5 drops just insta-die to the Brute. So I do wonder what he's going to go here for, and if he's going to slow down just a touch. And this is one of those funny reasons why I personally don't like the Violet Spellwings, because they're just rubbish, aren't they? As a minion.
Because they're just rubbish.
But you know, like, it does nothing this turn, right? Unless you ping it. Whereas if you just had an Arcane Missiles or, you know, whatever else, then it's more active, right? Other than when you play it on turn 1 or 2. It's so hard to actually get some worth out of it early on.
Yes, I do agree. They are incredibly slow. There are matchups for them where they're very useful just as an additional 1-drop. Against, say, Pure Paladin, for example, where it's really important not to lose the board early because they can just, you know, snowball on you. Having a 1-drop and just being able to then, like, trade it into their 1-drop and cast Arcane Missiles on the following turn just to make sure you're, like, denying Hand of Adult targets and stuff like that in the early game. can be really powerful. But I think overall against the spread, I do agree with you. I think it's a card that has become not good enough to see play overall.
Yeah, y'all had a couple of options there. I wouldn't have hated the Blood Boil Brute number 2, you know, and just choose that to trade and then gone face with the 5/2. It wouldn't have been too bad. I don't really think there's anything too crazy saving Blood Boil for, and the only real way it gets dealt with is if it gets devolved or frozen. But if it's frozen, then it pairs well with his Battle Rage. I don't know. I think I like that over just equipping the Wrench Caliber and not being able to swing with it. That is one of the benefits of the Violet Spellwing, though, is because the arcane missiles it creates wasn't in your deck. It is an additional reduction for those mana giants, which is one of the upsides.
Swidz did that part of his turn very, very quickly, at least, which made me think he had a plan of exactly what this turn was, which surprised me because I was looking at the start of this turn thinking this turn was incredibly difficult. And now it seems he's fallen back into that realization as well.
Well, you mentioned it earlier, though, the power of Frostbolt against I'll call it a weapon class, right? Yeah. So now the Wrench Caliber not only, you could argue, could be a Blood Boil Brute this turn, you also can't swing it, the previous turn, sorry. You also can't swing it this turn, so it might just be locked up just a little bit. And unlike previous games, Jarla's only on 19 now, so he doesn't have an armor cushion to help him out either.
Antonidas? Alright, we'll take another Mana Giant. That's fine.
I don't know how I feel about that, Sol. You could have picked Ras.
You see this 2-cost 8/8 that's about to be a 0-cost 8/8? It's quite a lot better than a 3/6 that you have to pay 5 for.
It is cool, though, isn't it? the one plus X damage is cool.
Yeah, Font of Power does create some interesting win conditions, though, for you sometimes. Like, I've literally had a game against, I think it was against Big Warrior as opposed to Bomb Warrior, where I thought I was dead and then just found a Font of Power, found an Antonidas, ended the game.
Right.
Same thing, like you can find like Dune Sculptor when you're running out of value in hand, like all those kind of things. Like, random mage minions can get a lot of work done. Not to mention just the simple version of discover a mage mirror. Oh, cool, Astromancer Solarian. Great, I'll just put another Prime in my deck.
It's also not incredibly uncommon to actually get the effect of Font of Power as well. Are you playing tons of minions, at least in some builds anyway?
I don't know what you mean, Raven. I've always got at least 6 primes in my deck, so that's never going to go off for me.
I think I've had it go off twice. Probably lost those games.
Sounds like you're losing those games, yeah.
Now, the trick really here for Swidz is how he uses these giants. In a lot of matchups, you just play all 3 and laugh. But unfortunately, Warrior, for Swidz, you can't really do that. And getting the most out of these is going to be key. Because one worry as well is, if he's done all this to make the giants cheat, and then he waits another 4 turns or something to play them, then that just also feels wasteful, right? You want to at least apply certain levels of pressure and not give Jarla more and more and more time to draw cards.
Shield slams are getting very frustrating if you're Jarla.
It's been pretty important, hasn't it? The actual just complete removal of armor that Swidz has managed for Jarla pretty much all game.
Yeah, Jarla hasn't really found like the armor smiths to be able to pop off with the risky skipper and just end things. Deathwing obviously could kind of be a disaster here.
Right.
But I guess if he swings in first, then there is no disaster. 2 8/8s always die here. It's just whether a 3/2 gets left up or not. This is smart. I see this line. Or at least I did not see this line until Jarla committed to it. I like it.
Yeah, because although a lot of the time the like 1/1s don't make too much of a difference to a Deathwing, they made all the difference there, right? That was just the world of difference. And there is the evocation. What are the options? Learn Draconic is there, and then outside of that, nothing too crazy.
Yeah, honestly, evocation has just not looked as strong as I was expecting it to. I was really expecting to come into this weekend and have the opportunity to talk about evocation has suddenly become one of the most powerful cards in the game, because this deck is so strong and it's one of the strongest cards in it. But players have just not had the pop-off turns that I was expecting them to have with that card.
Oh wait. Oh, okay. I wondered whether he was going to roll in Fireball that turn.
Okay.
Just to proc the Learn Draconic, that's all.
I think it's more important just to retain the value of the cards that you can when you get an evocation like that. So obviously the secrets are things that you can retain over time just by playing them. Anything like a magic trick or a font of power or anything like that kind of stuff. I think it's pretty important just to play those cards as a matter of priority.
Ooh, Swidz, I think, was just undecided till the very end there. He looked like he was about to drop that Mana Giant and then bailed at the last split second.
Yeah.
And that's tough. You've got to sit there and think, okay, buddy, you need to get a plan together, because having that kind of indecision as the turn is about to end is rough, right? That's not something you want to see from players.
Yeah, for sure. Obviously, there is some dilemma in whether or not you want to play it. I mean, first and foremost, it's an 8/8. It costs 0. Having it in play seems quite good, but there are payoff cards that he needs where, Conjurer's Calling will suddenly become a lot worse if he doesn't have any Mana Giants remaining in his deck to be able to use them on. We saw Jarla greeting the absolute nonsense out of that card just by waiting, not using his last Conjurer's Calling until he found that Mana Giant to be able to use it on.
It's one question I do have is if he's holding the Giant for Conjurers, which is fine, then should this Jandis have already been played by now then? Because Jandis is the other Conjurer's Calling target, right?
Sure, yeah.
And I feel like having both in hand feels like there's been a trick missed somewhere, or at least some pressure missed. Oh, whoa, that's dangerous.
What makes something real?
All right.
Oh,
I mean,
okay.
Wax the Dread is a card.
Yeah, make that
is
take
a
one.
Real, genuine Hearthstone card.
And you would always make the Wax the Dread the weak one, right? The weakness?
No, why?
Because that's the one where you're not bothered if it gets shuffled in and dies. It's like the backwards thinking one.
It's bigger than the other one. Why do I want it to die more easily?
Only marginally, though, right?
2 attack! He's
on
lot.
6 health!
What do you mean?
I don't know. I think I would have done the Wax Dread.
I mean, we don't actually know which one he's done. I'd still be right.
On my view, it looked like he picked the Sea Witch.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, because the Sea Witch flashed on its own for a split second, so
okay.
I think that's the choice. Could be wrong. Don't take me out. I'm going to go for a strong 93%. It's Sea Witch.
Okay. So your argument is you literally want it to die so that it's in your deck, or I don't really understand what you're saying. It's just a bigger minion.
Right. It's twofold, right? One, you could think that your opponent would think you'd always do Sea Witch anyway.
Sure.
But also, I just think if the Wax Dread dies, then that's going to be the high priority removal regardless, right? If it takes a shield slam or whatever, great. And you're still gaining a benefit, whereas if the Sea Witch dodges it, then it's just a 5/5 that's kind of being ignored. I don't know. Maybe I'm being very silly, and it's quite possible. But I just think I would have gone, well, the Death Rattle's good, so then make it die. And then it's only 2 health. If it was like a 2/3 instead of a 5/5, then obviously you'd make that one die instead. But for now, Wrench Caliber equipped here for Jarla, and as I mentioned, Swidz is only on 10 health. And finally, see some Conjurers calling here for this Giant. Here's the payoff. Swidz was holding on to that last mana Giant for.
Oh no! He got a 0-0.
He just has to go again, right?
In case anyone is unclear what I'm saying, this 12-12 cannot attack face, which in this scenario makes it functionally useless because Swidz needs to win the game incredibly quickly. He's at 10. There's 1 bomb in his deck. There's 2 more bombs about to be shuffled into his deck. Minions that can trade with other minions don't really matter in this situation.
I'm going to raise a point, Sol, and you're not going to like it.
Go on.
It soaks up boom bots.
It soaks up boom bots. Yeah, all right. Yeah, fair point. Good point. Good point. Good point. Well made. Chalk one up for Team Raven.
Yep, we're now at 1.
Yes.
But there is a risky skipper boom play, right?
Yeah.
It is possible.
Yeah.
All I want to see is risky skipper, boom, bomb, 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 all to the 12-12, 4 each. And I'll be like, I told you! Literally, best outcome from the contract. Once again, I keep looking at if there's any shield slam targets and realize Jarla has no armor, which has just been a common thing through the whole game. It's also impressive how long this mage can go for as well, right?
Yeah, for sure.
I think a lot of people think about mage, tempo mage, as like a tempo aggro deck, and it's really not necessarily the case by any means.
Right. It's one of the great things about the deck, and it's again very similar with the rogue that we saw ball control running in his lineup. Is, you know, as I was saying, I've seen him win games with 11 cards in his hand in fatigue, even though his deck tops out of 4. This is a very similar story with the mage deck. It doesn't look like it's full of value, but it absolutely is. Like, you do not run out of resources with this deck. You know, what's happened in this game for Swidz and what happened in the previous game for Jarla, like, I honestly think those are the anomaly games with Mage, where it's really looked very underpowered, going up against a deck that seems resilient. Yeah, Swidz, you have to try it, right? Like, it's actually correct. If the game bugs, you still win, because the game is the referee. Like, your opponent can't dispute that. The game is the referee. If it connected face, you win. That's just how it works. Always have to try.
Is there any reason to use it to trade first? I think there is, right? Because you stop the armor. Okay, good. I was staring at it going, it can't be correct to not swing it at something.
I'm telling you, like, you get into that mentality with Supreme Abyssal, though, where, like, because it can't attack face, you literally disregard the fact that it can attack. Like, it just becomes dead to you as a Hearthstone.
You do not exist.
Yeah, serious.
That was a good Conjurers, though, because any death rattle is going to be nice, but also the fact it summons another dragon is huge.
Yeah. There was also an argument there, like, maybe if he conjured into Walking Fountain, he wanted both of the minions to be alive so that he can then trade into both of them. It's a thing.
It's a thing. Yeah. Now the real thing is boom, Bladestorm, let's go. Oh yeah. Oh, I thought it was going to be 1! Jarla takes the victory with the bombs, piling on the pressure to end the game, but just for a second there, I thought the bombs would have put him to 1, and it would have been very, very funny. Congratulations to Jarla for evening up this series. We are not done yet. That was only game number 4, and these players, and honestly, the players all day have been going the distance, right? And I think it is just a nod to a lot of these lineups being very, very similar indeed.
Yeah, well, Ball kind of got swept, but apart from him, it's been a pretty close series. But yeah, we're going all the way down to now the Mage Mirror. We saw the Mage Mirror in that Ball Control series, which I believe was against Jarla. It's already become very difficult to keep all of this straight. But, you know, we saw kind of how it panned out, and I think, you know, I hope I explained how it panned out, where both players, as soon as one player pops off, you kind of just have to pop off in response, and then each player has to be able to do that every single turn for the rest of the game. up until that point, it's really all mostly just a little bit of noodling back and forth and setup turns from the two players. Mostly consisting of drawing cards and shuffling as many primes as possible into your deck for the late game. So if you can get that done, then it really does become incredibly explosive in the mid and late game turns.
And here we are, going to go into that last game, the Mage Mirror. It's all going to go off here, and I'm just going to quickly double-check the lists, as there are some differences here. Jarla is playing a lot more one-offs. There's 1 Violet Spellwing, 1 Devolving Missiles, 1 Brain Freeze, whereas Swidz is much more just on the straightforward list of the double Rare Foster, double Violet Spellwing, but 0 Brain Freeze and 0 Devolving Missiles as well. So Swidz definitely having his own take on this. It looks like a cleaner list, but is it a cleaner list with the correct choices? I think is the real question, right?
Yeah, no, it's a good way of putting it, because certainly, like, I've looked at a lot of other people's lists and thought, how can you not have any Brain Freeze in your deck? Like, that card's insane. It's 1 mana Frostbolt. Like, what on earth are you doing? And then sort of look at my list and think, well, yeah, I don't have Devolving Missiles. Like, you're always making some kind of sacrifice. There's no room for all of the cards that you want to play in this deck. You've got to find the ones that are slightly better on average, and then just rely on, Magic Trick and Mana Cyclone and all of these other things. If you really, really, really need a Devolving Missile, then that's going to hand it to you, like that sort of situation. So it's a really difficult deck to build. You can see that we're even, talking about Violet Spellwind still being in people's decks, which I think is certainly a slot you can free up for a more powerful card. But yeah, I think plenty more innovation still to be had with this mage deck.
I mean, I know day one I was looking at Thanos, for example. Oh wait, is this just a turn?
Hello? Swidz just played a 2/2. I was not expecting
I was looking at Jarla's hand when you said that, because I was like, wow, yeah, Jarla's hand is insane. Like, next turn's going to be crazy. And then you just said play the 2. I looked up, was like, where's all Swidz's spells? Swidz is just playing literal Tempo Mage.
Yeah. I mean, I do kind of want to bring that point up, that, like, Tempo Mage is a real misnomer for this deck, because a good 60-70% of the time it's not playing as a tempo deck whatsoever. It's building resources and then having pop-off turns and combo turns or whatever. But so far, the way Swidz has played it in both games that we've seen, he has taken the name Tempo Mage extremely literally.
Right, let me just do my who's winning checklist. He has more minions on board. His opponent's on less health. Okay, yeah, he's winning.
Yeah.
But here we go. I did mention the insane power of Jarla's hand and what it opened up for him in this turn, and you're about to see it. All the 0-cost spells he needs. Straight into a Mana Cyclone. Oof.
Jarla about to Crocodile Dundee this entire situation. You call that a Mana Cyclone? This is a Mana Cyclone.
You know what I'd love as well? If it had the Raz bug where the Mana Cyclone is just a bit bigger than the other guy.
Yeah.
It would be so...
He's just out there flexing on the other Mana Cyclone. Yeah.
Well, that was a turn, wasn't it?
It sure was. And, like, obviously, it looks really easy to just, like, say, well, he played a Mana Cyclone on 2, and now he's probably going to lose, like, he's behind. But, like, I think the more pertinent point is one of these players had a Sorcerer's Apprentice and the other one didn't. Yes, I think that's having a far bigger impact on who's ahead in this game right now than whether or not Swidz played a 2/2 on turn 2.
Yeah, completely agree. I mean, you're going to hear this a lot, but Sorcerer's Apprentice, best card in the deck. It makes the deck work, so you want it. And in a mirror match, it's obviously pushed even more.
Swidz, though, his hand does have a plan. His Giant costs 6, his Magic Trick will get it down to 5, so if he's able to find more Primordial Studies, he's able to find Evocation off the top, if he's able to find that crucial Sorcerer's Apprentice, he might just be able to turbo Giant Conjurer's Calling before his opponent can do anything equally powerful in terms of board development. I don't necessarily think he's out of this just yet.
Yeah, there's definitely the tools are there, but I'm staring at Jarla's hand here and checking out that potion. Like, trade potion? Is that ever worthwhile? You get a 1-mana Cyclone and a 1-mana Solarian?
So this is something that I had to learn very early. I think, you know, a couple of the few games I have lost with this deck is because I got baited by Potion of Madness, so it's something that I like had to force out of my psyche as much as possible. But I think if anything, I've gone too far the other way, and I'm now missing opportunities where it is genuinely good. But this is my default position of, no, I can do things that are stronger than playing Potion of Madness here, so I'm not going to do it.
Look, Sol, if you told me your default position is to instead play an 8-8 on turn 4, then fine.
Yes.
Okay, you win this round, friend. An insane draw for Jarla, but again, the power of the Apprentice earlier has made the Giant playable now. And it all just trickles down from the Apprentice. And suddenly, we were talking about Swidz getting that Mana Giant cheaper. Well, Jarla's just done that as well.
Yeah, I didn't quite process that it was 1. I've played enough games with the deck where I have a pretty good internal tracker, but it was telling me that it was around 3 or 4 at that point. I did not realize it cost 1. But I guess the Arcane Intellect he cast there was a generated Arcane Intellect as well, right? Which also discounted it as he drew it. So yeah, when I was talking about how Swidz might be able to get his own Giant down cheaply and quickly, I was kind of thinking that Jarla's Giants were 1 or 2 more expensive than they actually ended up being. So yeah, Swidz is in some trouble here for sure.
Ooh, okay. Not bad, though. Managed to just neutralize the Giant to an extent. And also he's edging slowly closer to his own Mana Giant Conjurer's Calling as well. The only problem is, yes, Jarla's was neutralized a tiny bit that turn, but Jarla has 1 million cards. And guess what? His second Sorcerer's Apprentice. So maybe not this turn, maybe not even next turn, but probably at least the turn after, he's going to go off with Sorcerer's Apprentice and another Cyclone.
Ooh. Allah. Pretty juicy outcome. Dealing with that 0-3 is much more difficult than you might think it is when you are off board completely.
What to do?
Means as of right now, that is another persistent threat that Jarla just has this entire game. Potion of Madness, the Alar, play the new copy, ping it, let it resurrect again as a 7-3.
You could do that.
What to do?
Or you could just play Apprentice and do stuff.
Yeah, that sounds better. See what I mean about getting baited by Potion?
Yeah.
You get burned.
5 minutes with me and you want to Potion everything.
Yep. This game's on turn 6. I feel like when you watch a Druid game and they do disgusting things, and you look down at their mana and like, oh, they have 10 mana. This makes sense. This is the same speed Druid does disgusting things, but they don't have to ramp, so it looks more ridiculous. Jarla has had multiple 8/8s in play this game.
Oh look,
he's on 6
Guardian Animals.
Yeah. It's revolting how quickly this deck can pop off if you do get the powerful hand.
So a dragon and a beast and an elemental walked into a bar. Because that's what this feels like right now, and this is a joke is not going to end well for Swidz.
I was going to say the joke is not going to end well for you, then, because you're just about to get yourself into trouble by some horrifically offensive punchline.
Nope. That's why I don't bother with the punchlines.
Okay.
Not because I just didn't have one. Ray of Frost is going to be able to buy Swidz some time here and get this Mana Giant down, but the problem is can he play the Mana Giant? He can't, right? He just needs it to be on the turn he drops the Conjurer's Calling, because he can't reliably get it to stick to the board here.
Right, and again, he's in that kind of scenario where he needs a Turalai and the Tenured plus a Walking Fountain off his Mana Giant to actually have a big enough impact on the game. It's because just huge minions with big stats are unlikely to be good enough, because you're just passing the turn back to your opponent then with full initiative and 7 cards in their hand, and they're going to be able to deal with that situation.
Mm-hmm.
You need to impact the board immediately and have big minions.
The problem is, if Jarla wants, he can just put even more big minions on the board. He has the Agendis, he has Solarium Prime, which is probably going to look pretty solid here. He could Raz and do something with that. the options are almost endless. He could just potion and get a pretty insane set of cards, honestly. Mainly just for that ally, because I don't think he can really get hold of a dragon. I think if he had a dragon in hand, it would be sick just for the rot nest, but.
Still has Primordial Studies left. He can pick up a Zero Explorer for his Rot Nest Drake that he's got for his Potion of Illusion. Yeah, we're really getting baited by Potion of Illusion now, really. we're way too deep.
And it's only day 1.
Yeah. That ain't it.
Yep. Simply lethal on board for Jarla, and that means he is going to take it. All came down to a Mage Mirror, and again, you just see the difference of an early explosive start that this Mage can do. But we've seen it all from this Mage so far. We've seen it go super late game. We've seen the aggressive early game options, and I can't wait to see more. But we are going to be seeing more of Jarla as he is going to then go through and look pretty good the rest of the weekend.
Yeah, finds his way all the way through the winner's bracket there up the top, picking up those 2 victories that he needs, and we are going to see him later on in the weekend now, whereas Swidz has to reset, try and pick up another victory for himself a little bit later on. And that was a hell of a series. I'm sure it took a lot out of both of those players, just as it did out of us. That was an absolute marathon from the 2 players, with Bomb Warrior showing up in the majority of the games, and even those Mage games, you know, again, you were talking about how it's misconceived as an aggro deck. Like, it absolutely isn't. It can go as late as just about any other deck in the game, and you've seen it going toe-to-toe in the late game with a lot of other decks. It just so happens that Bomb Warrior is a very hard deck to do that with, because eventually, when you don't have any healing in your deck, you're just going to draw out the bombs and die. So, still questions to be asked about Bomb Warrior, but honestly still about the Mage as well, because as much as I love that deck, you know, I can't be so biased as to ignore that on stream it is also seeming to be struggling. You know, the hands are not coming together for a lot of these Mage players. So still very interested into how these 2 decks develop going forward.
Yeah, whether that's just experience or the deck itself, I'm sure it's probably just a mixture of them both. But that we've got tons more matches coming up. We've got 2 more for today, and then we've got the Americas kicking off their first day of Grandmasters once we are done. So tons more Hearthstone coming up today. But we are going to go to a break while we give the players just a little bit of a break to get ready for their next match. Don't go anywhere, and we're going to be right back with some more Hearthstone Grandmasters.